What's good, YouTube? It's Mirror Squid back in another Squidio. Today, I want to talk to you guys about a couple of cards that I think are going to be somewhat relevant in the upcoming metagame, so you guys should look into maybe picking these up. So first and foremost is none other than the main Link monster for the Melodious archetype. As you guys know, we're getting new Melodious support in the upcoming set in Legacy of Destruction. It's been somewhat hyped on YouTube in the past week. A lot of YouTubers are kind of realizing that, you know, hey, the Melodious guys are really powerful. Just off of one Melodious Refrain, which is a new Pendulum monster, or better yet, off of Ostinato, which is their in-engine Shaddoll fusion, a card that's been out for a long time. They can do a lot of cool things. They can put up an Appaloosa for free, not even using your normal summon if you happen to open Ostinato. They have the ability to Pendulum summon a bunch of monsters as well out on their turn without having normal summon. There's so many cool things that are enabled just by either normal summoning Refrain or activating Ostinato, and it really bridges a lot of archetypes that kind of needed that high impact normal summon to resolve, so they're splashing in this engine into a lot of decks like Voiceless Voice. But better yet, I think Pure Melodious is actually somewhat of a threat. You guys been around YouTube, you might have seen Jojo or Top Deck's video about his Pure deck, where you can actually set up like an Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon among an Appaloosa, IP Masquerena, and other things just off of Ostinato, have 5 cards in hand. So this is really crazy, and the Pure deck actually does play the Link monster, which has a very powerful effect. So Bloom Harfest, the Melodious Composer, requires 2 fairy monsters, and she actually allows you to discard a card on summon as a trigger effect to special summon 2 different Melodious monsters from your deck with different names. So that allows you to basically summon anything you want. You get a bunch of value. If this card's resolving, you're probably in a very favorable position to win, and you can go off into your fusion plays. You can make a lot of cool interruptions. So this card is only sitting at $1, and I realized it's from Dual Overload, and it only has 1 printing. And you guys have been following Dual Overload in the past, you know, cards like Relinquished Anima, the Platinum Gadget, the Ancient Gear guy. Like, a lot of these guys just trickled up in value because people realized they were not getting reprinted, and they just had no other way to pick them up other than on secondary market, right? So I think this is the type of card that might actually see some play in a Pure deck. I definitely think the Pure deck is at least tier 2 and can definitely do well at regional level, maybe even YCS. So this card, I think, once people realize is, hey, the Pure deck is really good, we're going to pick these up. I mean, speaking of Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, that's not a terrible card to pick up either. He actually does have the powerful Omni Negate effect that's not really around anymore in the format because of the fact that Baron de Fleur and Savage are both banned. So in the right deck that splashes Melodious, I think it's really easy to go into this card. And of course, you have the Melodious monsters in your extra deck face up to pay for the cost to negate something with this card. So this is the type of card, if you guys don't have already, I think it's definitely good to keep in your arsenal, especially with the Melodious stuff running around. I mean, the fact that Botcha, the Melodious Maestra, actually is level 7, it's almost like Konami had foresight to say, hey, you can overlay 2 of these Melodious Maestras to actually make Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, link it off from there, activate the effect in graveyard, summon out a free Omni Negate. So yeah, if you guys don't have your hands on this card yet, definitely pick it up. Up next is a somewhat broken card that has a very powerful effect, but it's just never been able to be played realistically because of the hard restriction it imposes on you the turn you activate it. Burning Draw is actually a part of the Salamangreat archetype. It's always treated as a Salamangreat card, but you can actually play this in Tenpai Dragons because of the fact that it has a hard restriction which locks you into summoning fire monsters only during the turn that you activate it. But this card is absolutely disgusting going second when your opponent has a board, because it says if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can activate this card, target a Link monster they control, and draw cards equal to its Link rating. So like, literally, if you target an Appaloosa, you're drawing 4 cards, and in Tenpai Dragons, you don't really care about the attributes. For the most part, everything's just fire, right? Especially the main cards in your extra deck, like the Sangenpai Dragons, as well as Trident Dragon, those are all fire. So having basically no restriction and then drawing multiple cards, aka drawing the more board breakers to help push through our opponent's board, just like break through the resources and OTK them, is quite insane, honestly. Like, I haven't seen anyone really talking about this card. I've kind of come across it in the past when considering side deck options for like Fire King and Snake Eyes, but the matter of the fact is, you know, you have other attributes in that deck like Dark Witch, and it's just too much of a pain to actually lock yourself in a fire for the whole turn. But in Tenpai Dragons, you really don't care because like everything's a fire dragon, right? So at that point, you can just activate this freely and basically have a card that's more busted than Graceful Charity. Even if you're not targeting an Appaloosa, if you're targeting like an IP Masquerena, the fact that you force them to actually activate the IP Masquerena then and there is a lot of value, right? You're not going neg. You're wasting their SP Banish because they're going to SP Little Knight or Appaloosa from there, so you're kind of baiting them to do it, and they're forcefully doing that in order to avoid it so you draw cards. But I honestly think this is a type of card that you could experiment with going second, game 2, and game 3 in Tenpai Dragons, because being able to draw multiple cards is just way too busted not to play. So we've already talked about the next card a little bit, at least on this channel, and a lot of people have been hyping it up. Yes, Ghost Ogre is a card, but you cannot activate that freely. You have to wait until your opponent forcibly activates the effect of the field spell, which against something like Tenpai Dragons, they can just leave that Tenpai field spell chilling on their board. They don't have to activate the effect of search, right? They can just use the protection continuous effect, normal summon like a Pydra, and then full combo use. So that makes Ghost Ogre, I think, a lot worse. Vados is just a clean answer against the Tenpai Dragon field spell, but better yet, there are a lot of other field spells running around the metagame. Like, obviously, Fire King has Fire King Island, so if they do not have Sanctuary, sometimes you can catch them off guard with another hand trap, just wipe their entire board. I will say it's not like the best card against Pure Snake Eye just because you don't really care about the field spell. Like, even if you interact with it, they're still going to be able to put up some semblance of a board. But when you combine this with other cards, I think it gets a lot better. They do have a clean answer if you think about it by linking up into Appaloosa and then trading off one of the Appaloosa negates to negate your Vados effect to destroy their field. But against decks that cannot actually make Appaloosa, this card becomes a liability because it just chills on their field. They cannot link off with it or you nuke their board. And as long as it's on their field, all you really have to do is find a way to get rid of it from their board, so then it triggers in your graveyard to wipe their entire board. So yes, it's a liability for a lot of decks out there. And of course, there are some rogue decks out there that make usage of field spells. We're talking about like Flunderies and even the Yubo deck. They're getting a new field spell, and a lot of people are actually experimenting with Nightmare's Throne in a type of Fiend kind of variant that has linking, that has Unchained cards. These are definitely decks you should expect to play against in the metagame at a regional or maybe even YCS. There will be a lot of rogue decks. Even Mementos, like they have the field spell as well that allows them to reset stuff and also special summon things out from the graveyard when they pop something. Vados is just like a clean answer against a lot of the field spell reliant decks, and it's only going to get better and better as the newer decks all have field spells that search for stuff. For some reason, Konami just keeps printing it. Don't ask me why, but hey, as long as you have Vados, it's actually a clean answer. You know, I honestly think that if Vados was in the OCG, it'd be an absolute side deck staple, but the fact that it's not right now means that, you know, we really have no thing to base the card quality off of but ourselves. And personally, I'm just telling you guys right now, I think this card is really, really powerful and it will see some play in the upcoming format. All right, so up next is a card that I haven't seen a lot of recently, but Instant Fusion is actually the type of card that allows you to play into hand traps going first, and there are certain decks that can actually afford to run this and take up the one extra deck slot. Yes, it is quite steep if you think about it, because you're only playing one single card in the main deck for one card in the extra deck, and that's kind of painful. But if you do draw this card, sometimes it can mean the difference between winning and losing because you're able to build your end board specifically through Infinite Impermanence. Why? Because we can summon out Mud Dragon and then call the attribute. For example, we're playing Tenpai Dragons, we can just summon Mud Dragon, call Fire, and then we're in a really, really good spot. You cannot get effect failure, you cannot get impermed. Even if we don't have the Tenpai field spell online, or if they have a way to get rid of it, like a Cosmic Cyclone, we're still going to be able to protect ourselves because there's a lot of targeting interruption nowadays. Failure and imperm is the obvious, but there's also cards like Promethean Princess in the graveyard. You know, a lot of cards actually forcibly target the card on the board, and having the option to go to Mud Dragon I think is really, really interesting, in addition to it being a body that you can actually link off into something like a Charmer after you're done with it. There's obviously Millennium Eyes Restrict as well, who interacts with Ash favorably as opposed to Mud Dragon, but they each have their strength. Like Mud Dragon can trade with Imperm and turn that off, but then Millennium Eyes cannot interact with Imperm, but he can interact with Ash Blossom. So there's some really cool things you can do with this card in the right deck. You can play maybe Millennium Eyes Restrict and Mud Dragon, but personally I feel like Mud Dragon is just a really, really powerful card right now because it's good going first and second, and you're just like slamming it on the table and it does a lot for you in terms of protecting your attributes. Guys, Squiddy's Fire King Masterclass. Yep, and it's been updated for the newest April 2024 ban list with a lot of additional information about how you should play around things and how the meta has ramped up. For those of you guys that haven't seen this, we built out a Fire King Masterclass with a lot of information about the Snake Eye Fire King deck, so playing into every single hand trap known to man, every single end board and combos that you should be doing with this deck, a lot of information that you should know about playing Fire King in general. Even if you guys don't play this, I think it's going to be valuable if you want to beat the deck, or if you want to learn how to do the Snake Eye combos. This also has a lot of that. But yeah, guys, for a one-time payment of $20 USD, you get 60 plus slides full of information, as well as 2.5 hours of recordings that we went through live for this masterclass a couple of weeks ago. If you guys want to support me in the channel and also learn how to play competitive Fire Kings, this is definitely something you can check out. There's a link below in the description. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll dive back into the content now. So the next one is a bit of an outlier. I saw this in an OCG recipe, but guys, Cyber's Quantum Dragon is actually a level 7 generic synchro monster that's dark and has 2500 attacks. So for those of you Tenpai Dragon players, you kind of know what this means. Going first, or when your opponent forces you to go first, you can actually play one of the most powerful trap cards in the game, and that's actually Eradicator Epidemic Virus. We can now make Eradicator live off of just one Pydra, and then make Quantum Dragon, summon it on the table. Their draw phase, activate Eradicator, call spells, and that could nuke like all of their starters, extenders, and potentially any ways to play. Now, it is a little bit steep if you think about it, because you're investing 2 cards into this entire combo. There's no way, as far as I'm aware, to get Quantum Dragon out besides having either just Phaedra, or if you have like a 3-card combo, maybe there's some way to do it off of Ancient Fairy Dragon to get the bodies on board. But otherwise, you're just investing 2 cards, and sometimes that can backfire, so you do need other cards to defend yourself. Once the spell cards are gone, they're gonna have other monster extenders, so you need ways to actually trade with those. But I just thought this is interesting because Eradicator is positioned really well right now, especially against decks like Runic Stun that play like all spells. Having this auto win button is just like crazy good. You can call spells, traps against Labyrinth, and against the right deck, you know, against Snake Eyes or whatever, if you call spells and you have ways to protect yourself from the Snake Eye Ash or the Black Witch, then you're probably in a really, really powerful spot. Now, personally, when you compare it to something like Heat Wave is a bit of a neg-1, and all it really does is interact in the fact that it gives you a battle phase, but it doesn't trade with your opponent's cards immediately. I just really don't like how Heat Wave kind of makes you roll the dice and hope that they don't have anything to stop you on your following turn. If they decided in like D-Barrier or something to trade with your Heat Wave, you're basically losing a card, right? So that's why I thought Eradicator was really, really interesting, that you can side it in, and it does have that auto-win matchup against a lot of the decks out there. World Dino Wrestling is a field spell that has seen marginal play way in the past when Pankratops is at 3, and now that it's at 2 again, this card might be really, really interesting. So this card actually has a graveyard-based effect that says you can banish it from your grave while your opponent controls more monsters than you. Special summon a Dino Wrestler monster from your deck. So obviously Pankratops is our go-to. Now this card becomes extremely useful in a deck like Tenpai Dragons, where you're making usage of field spells in tandem with cards like Ancient Fairy Dragon or Set Rotation. You set this up to your opponent's side of the field, you pop it, you have the grave effect to special summon out Dino Wrestler Pankratops, which is really, really cool. Now, the other cool thing I realized about this card is it becomes actually a good card to draw when you have the Tenpai Dragon field spell, because you can just discard this, and this obviously has a graveyard effect where you get a free Dino Wrestler Pankratops to come out on the table and then threaten whatever your opponent has set or whatever your opponent has on the board. And it's very, very nice into cards like Dimensional Barrier, because those cards trade off and prevent you from playing for the turn, or like Threatening Roar, for example. You don't get a battle phase. So you can actually use these cards to set up a Pankratops and then have an additional amount of defense and hopefully survive on the ensuing turn, because, you know, Pankratops just has the effect to pop whenever, right? So that's really, really neat. So yeah, that's about it for the cards that I thought were kind of interesting. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Other than that, subscribe, smash the like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Let us know if there are any good cards that we're not aware of in the comments below, so we can have that knowledge for the upcoming regionals and YCSs. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you guys next video. Bye-bye.